you had to do an extreme physical transformation. So in addition to losing, was it 30 pounds that you lost?
I went from like 185 to 158. So
Okay,
yeah,
so
like
yeah,
28
like,
pounds,
a little under
27
30.
pounds.
And then there's the contacts. I mean, there's the different looks that Ed has. I mean, so what was your reaction when you first looked in the mirror when you were in full Ed Gein getup?
Well, the weight loss was a consequence of starting to do the costume fittings, and I just put the costume on, which is the first time you really arrive at experiencing the character for me. And I just said it doesn't feel right at all. I've just got too much bulk, you know. I just don't feel right, and so I had to.
Man, it's too muscly, guys. Come on, we gotta slim it down.
It wasn't muscle. It wasn't muscle.
I think it was.
I'd packed on a few pounds,
Okay.
and so I had not been working out for about 4 years. It was mainly around my waist, but yeah. So I had to very rapidly lose that 30 pounds, which I did in about 3 weeks, which was not a pleasant process. And then like finding the voice was a big part of it, and and then just like finding the rhythm, finding the way he moved, the way he interacted with his world. There were a lot of, well, not a lot, but there was a very helpful little catalog of photographs that we put together, which informed a little bit. We weren't able to find any video footage, but I was able to track down some tapes. He did one interview while he was in custody the night after he was arrested, and I was able to track down that tape, which informed a lot. So, yeah.
You and Morgana, most beautiful couple on this carpet, most beautiful couple I've seen in a while on a carpet. But what does her support mean to you? How did you manage to leave it behind and not bring it home with you to her and all that?
Morgana's always so generous with me and understanding of my need to sort of disappear when I work. We've been together a long, long time, and she knows that it just doesn't really work trying to compete with work, and so what I do is I make sure I give her all of my undivided attention when I'm not working. So we made a rule a long time ago: when I finish a job, I sort of disappear, go do the job, and she said, when you come back, just make sure you're ready to see me. Yeah. And so I took a week when I finished this and just decompressed. I was in Chicago, so I went up to Plainfield, where Ed Gein was from, and visited his grave, which was just something I decided was like a fitting way to say goodbye.
Farewell.
Say, I hope, we told his story.
In the trailer, we see you fully transform into Ed Gein. I mean, unrecognizable in a lot of ways. Playing a real person and a notorious one at that. I mean, what was the most challenging aspect for you of nailing that and making sure you're doing it right?
It's just always a big responsibility when you're playing somebody that actually lived, I mean, I always, as an actor, feel a responsibility to the character and a sort of a desire to protect it and to try to find as much truth and, in the performance as possible. But like I said, it's a bigger responsibility when it was a real-life historical figure. I think that what I was really interested in right from the beginning was the way Ryan talked about it. He wasn't really interested in what Ed did. He was interested in why he did what he did. And that really became our obsession, was like digging under the layers. And we didn't want to sensationalize it. We certainly didn't want to glorify it in any way. It's really a deep exploration of mental illness and the consequence of isolation and abuse. And, it's not to say I really feel sorry for Ed, because he's a hard person to really empathize with, because he did do some pretty despicable things. But my job as an actor certainly was not to judge him at all, was just to try to understand him and actually just make this as human as possible, try to find the human being behind the monster.
Absolutely. Very final question. What I think is so great about this series, we see in a lot of true crime dramas, people romanticize the villain. But from what I'm hearing from everybody here in this story, it's not what we're trying to do at all. We're trying to avoid romanticizing Ed Gein, and it's instead, like you said, a deep dive into the mental health. So why was that important to kind of make that differentiation from some other true crime dramas where people do kind of romanticize the villain?
Well, I think storytelling at its purest is about the human condition and about trying to understand ourselves through the art of exploring these characters in these stories. And so, unless you're looking for the truth, I don't know what you're actually doing. Right. You know what I mean? Yeah. Other than it just becomes sort of some grotesque parody and a glorification of something that shouldn't be glorified at all. Right. And so it seemed like going for the truth was the only option we had. And I adore Max, who, as I was just talking
Yes.
to, the executive producer and director. I'd worked with him once before, and it was actually Max that introduced me to Ryan, and I knew that he's really just interested in exploring human behavior and what makes us tick. Like, it's hard to make sense of this bizarre existence, even if you're a normal person, or whatever that means. But when you're dealing with extreme characters, it's just a kind of a fascinating process to try to understand. Like, it was like crazy, the stuff that Ed was doing, objectively kind of bizarre behavior. And so we were just really fascinated with trying to figure out, as much as we could, what the truth behind all of that was.